Okay. Good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us for the first PetroChem Canada webinar. My name is Wes Scott. I'm the Conference Director for PetroChem Canada. I'll act as your MC this morning. PetroChem Canada takes place hopefully this September 30th through October 1st in Sarnia. We remain hopeful that we'll be able to do a live event, which includes 2 days of business and technical sessions, a technical exhibition, and lots of physical distanced networking. Right now, we don't intend to offer PetroChem as a virtual only event, but perhaps as a hybrid event. If you're interested in learning more about PetroChem Canada, please visit petrochemcanada.com for details. This morning's webinar is presented by EnerChemTek. EnerChemTek is a global firm operating since 2002 with only seasoned senior professionals specialized in providing expert knowledge on demand and business intelligence, including market research, data, technology analysis, and strategic planning in the energy, petrochemicals, specialty chemicals, and advanced material verticals. Its services are complemented with other functional areas of expertise such as scenario planning, innovation management, IP management, and data science and analytics. The company leverages digital technologies to deliver services through a suite of modular web applications. With these services, EnerChemTek wants to become the destination of choice for any company or executive seeking tailored, expert knowledge in the supply chains in which the company participates. So thank you, EnerChemTek, for putting this together this morning. The presentation is Engage and Escape, using scenario planning and innovation management to combat commoditization. And this morning it's being presented by Mitch Halpern, Principal Consultant, Innovation and IP Management for EnerChemTek.
Thank you, Wes. Thanks everybody for taking the time to join with us today and hopefully learn some things about an interesting approach to strategic planning in these days of ultra rapid technology growth and concomitant ultra rapid commoditization. What we're going to do today is basically divide this presentation into 5 different segments. We're going to talk about the problems that we are facing today as a result of technology, rapid technology development. And then we're going to talk about a way of eliminating a one-dimensional approach to businesses, particularly businesses in rapidly commoditizing segments. We're going to then go into a discussion of the methodologies that we have found successful in working with our clients to help them deal with this situation and generate higher margins over a longer period of time. And finally, we'll just briefly mention our plans for the part 2 of this webinar, where we'll be doing a case study on the finding a technology strategy and developing scenarios involving carbon dioxide capture and use, which is a subject that is of great interest to folks today, and probably of great interest to a lot of folks who are currently listening to this webinar. Oops. You have a bit of a technology issue here. What is going on?
Looks like it's just going the wrong way on you.
Yeah, it's very weird.
Let me have control of the mouse for a second,
Yeah,
and
why
I'll
don't
get you
you
back started.
control it, Wes? It's now misbehaving.
All right. So I'm going to stop share, and I'll just take over from here, and you can just let me know when to.
That'll be a good idea.
All right. Sorry, folks. Just give us a second to get back there.
All right. Technology in general, it's hard to find somebody who would think that technology and progress in technology development hasn't been a boon to the rapid growth of the global economy over the course of many, 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 many years. Technologies such as advanced manufacturing, rapid process modeling, computer-aided molecular design, advanced material development, machine learning, and artificial intelligence have had and will continue to have a great deal to do with stimulating economic growth globally. But what some people forget is that this technology growth is a double-edged sword. That the bad news when it comes to technology growth is that it makes it much easier to shorten product life cycles, create rapid commoditization, and increase margin pressures. These days, many products are basically obsolete from day one. The progress in design, test, and related technologies have allowed companies to basically design around existing patents and intellectual property and basically result in a situation where today's high margin innovation is tomorrow's low margin commodity. Next slide, Wes. Again, the one way of dealing with this is to basically stay in your lane. And historically, companies have basically decided that they're either high-end, high-margin companies. As soon as any of their businesses become commoditized, they divest, or they basically optimize the strategies of their company to basically deal with being in a commodity business, or they continue to, or they decide to move or continue to be in various high margin businesses. If we look at the next slide, we see that in our experience, companies can no longer afford this kind of one-dimensional approach to their business. And what they really need to do is both engage with the challenge of manufacturing a commodity business while continuing their own innovation management and innovation approaches to develop a continuous input of potential higher margin businesses that they can manage successfully. And so on the engage side, we have a combination of the usual approaches to managing a commodity business by lowering production costs, lowering R&D costs, lowering risks, creating flexible, robust strategies, and embracing the uncertainties in the environment. Where in the escape side, these companies have been successful in also establishing an innovation culture, recognizing the value of IP and how to capture it, implementing innovation, efficient ideation, evaluation, and stage gate processes by taking the maximum value out of forming interdisciplinary teams, by undergoing and by doing experimenting on a small scale with new business ideas and opportunities, obtaining feedback from your customer's customer. This one has been particularly interesting over the years as B2B businesses have slowly but surely been finding that it makes sense for them to look at the end use markets for their customers and use that as an important input into their innovation processes. And finally, by implementing strategies that allow them to fail fast and, if necessary, move on to other businesses in their and other ideas in their innovation pipelines. Next slide. What we have found is that two of the major approaches and methodologies that our successful clients have used in their tool chest for dealing with this engage and escape kind of methodology are both scenario planning and innovation management, including intellectual property management. So if we could have the next slide. Key to the efficient innovation process, as I briefly alluded to, is the formation of interdisciplinary teams from across the company that will aid in breaking down technology and business and culture silos that exist within all larger sized companies. Using workshops that maximize the value of these teams in a short period of time to do ideation, platform creation, evaluation, criteria development, and initial preliminary evaluation and ranking of leading ideas that come out of these workshops, using IP landscape analysis to see where there are holes in the IP landscape that a given company can plug with the ideas generated in their IP, in their innovation workshops, and also to give them a notion as to where it would be sort of futile for them to start any kind of independent R&D in an area that's already being dominated by other companies that have a significant head start, and also to help them identify companies that they may wish to partner with, take licenses from. This includes university and academic tech transfer licenses. Rapid profiling that again gives an initial view as to what potential business models, potential partners, who the potential partners might be, and what potential marketing and commercialization approaches might be, and also gives a view based on a company's culture what an efficient stage gate process would look like that would involve the selection of relevant key performance indicators, relevant experimentation, how to find out whether these experiments will lead to consumer acceptance of new technologies and or business models. There's a current controversy in the innovation management community about internal versus external incubation, whether one would actually is better off incubating new technologies internally so that there is a more efficient method of keeping these new business ideas somehow connected to existing internal company resources, or whether it's best to prevent contamination of these ideas with the internal company culture and establish external incubators that bring the technology to the point of commercialization before, or at that point, the company needs to make a decision whether or not to invest heavily in a new business. And similarly, as I've alluded to, whether a company is better off developing new businesses internally new technologies that would be needed to be developed in order to take advantage of new business ideas, or to plug gaps by licensing technologies and by using joint development agreements. The other part of this process is scenario planning. And we're going to take the next few minutes to look at how scenario planning works, what scenario planning is or isn't, and how it interacts and supports the general innovation process. The first thing to realize about scenario planning and about strategic plans in general is that most strategic decisions are consciously or unconsciously based around assumptions about what the future is going to look like. So whether or not you take into account futures when you develop a single point strategic plan, or whether you don't, every market forecast, every strategic plan that doesn't use scenario planning is basically assuming what the future is going to look like. Unfortunately, we don't have a crystal ball, and the future is very complicated and sometimes hits you upside the head, as we are currently experiencing with the COVID-19 pandemic. So basically, every strategy based on a single point forecast is basically going to be wrong. And every market forecast is going to be wrong. But if we use scenario planning to construct alternative futures from high impact, high uncertainty forces and high impact, low uncertainty forces, we can either create robust strategies that lower risks in multiple scenarios, or we can at least understand the extent of the risks we are taking if we choose a strategy that's only relevant for a limited number of scenarios. We can conserve our resources in terms of not investing in everything under the sun to try to hedge our bets over a zillion different potential technology areas, and together with innovation management, as we discussed and will continue to discuss for the rest of our seminar today, we can uncover new opportunities. Next, Les. So let's look at scenario planning in somewhat more detail. Next. Basically, this isn't probably a mystery to most folks, that business and technology decisions are influenced by a lot of interrelated factors, ranging from international relations to culture to resource availability and environmental issues, politics, general economics, and all of these forces are interrelated and will influence the kinds of business and technology decisions that we need to make in order to run a successful operation. And in any kind of strategic planning process, we need to make these complex relationships part of the process. Next. And in order to do that, the best way that we have found is to use what we call decision-focused scenarios. And decision-focused scenarios are not single-end endpoint snapshots. They're not what we think the future is going to look like, and we're going to just put all our bets into one potential future. It's not a prediction, because as we've already discussed, most predictions are based on single point forecasts. It's not a general view of a positive or negative future. what we found is that unless the scenarios are focused on a specific decision that needs to be made by a given company, they tend to be too general and can devolve into what practitioners of this art tend to call corporate entertainment. They're interesting, but they're not particularly useful. Again, the products of what most futurists do that are detached from your specific decision focus fall into this category of general interest, but not particularly useful for making a specific decision. And finally, from a quantitative perspective, they're not a arithmetically determined set of focuses. So we're not looking at what the median market projection will be for polyethylene and then taking some sort of error bar analysis around it, because again, that doesn't provide you with the information you need to do a good job of taking into account the complex interrelationships that we discussed on the last page. Now, what scenarios are detailed descriptions of structurally different, plausible futures that take into account the high impact, high uncertainty, and high impact, low uncertainty forces that are going to directly impact your decision. They're also the result of the insight and perceptions of a wide range of your staff and management, and they're strategic. They take into account the strategic decisions that you need to make. So they are, again, the two most important things to remember here are that we're talking about decision focus and descriptions of different plausible futures that will impact your decision focus. Next, Wes. The benefits of this approach are an integrated understanding of the dynamics of change that are facing your company in terms of the specific decision or decisions you want to make. You will generate a complete range of opportunities and threats, and these opportunities in particular can be fed in and used in your innovation management process. They reduce the element of surprise. And so it makes people aware of the plausible possibilities that could threaten their business and may not have been considered in any kind of typical strategic planning kind of situation and kind of analysis. They also provide a range of strategic options and signposts, changes in the environment that would dictate when to change the strategy. As an example of this, my team did a large project for Samsung many years ago, looking at their R&D strategy in the display business. And one of the issues that they were having is that at the time we did this study, there were about 5 or 6 candidate display technologies that may have been the winner or potential winners in different niches in the display market. And Samsung was concerned at the time that if they invested basically an equal amount of money in their R&D and all of these areas, they would wind up with an insufficient mass of investment to be successful in any of them. And what we were able to do for them is use scenario planning and these signposts that come out of the planning to help them develop a flexible R&D strategy where they can recognize certain key changes in the technology and business environment, as well as consumer behavior environment, that would enable them to rapidly switch their financial R&D funding into different areas. And this enabled them to cut their R&D spending by a significant amount while allowing them to become one of the leaders in the flat panel display business. Companies that didn't follow this sort of approach wound up to a large extent with their pants down and became sort of irrelevant in the flat panel display business. And again, once you can have this scenario planning methodology as a culture within your corporation, it will allow you to monitor business and technology developments on a continual basis, which will give you a leg up in terms of changing the scenarios as you go and making your strategic planning more accurate and efficient over time. Okay, Wes, next.